Hey everybody, and welcome back. In my last video I took this image here, and a couple of you have asked how I actually edited this image and how I put the two exposures together. So I'm not going to get into the Lightroom side of things. It's pretty simple. I put it in black and white, added some contrast and took down the highlights and everything. But this is more about how I put the two exposures together in Photoshop. So what I'll do here is show you the exact technique I used. It's pretty simple, but anyway, let's get into this and I'll show you what I did. Okay, so here are the two images that I'll be using. This is the one where I used the faster shutter speed to make sure that I got the stick in focus so that I didn't get too much movement. And this is the one where I used a longer exposure so I could get the movement in the water and the clouds. But obviously you see that the stick here is blurred out because of the movement. So that's the reason why I've had to use a double exposure for this. One thing to mention is that I've used a little bit of denoiser on this image just so that it kind of matches the smoothness of the longer exposure. So what I'll do is I'll open both of these up as layers in Photoshop. Okay, so now we have both layers open in Photoshop. The one on the top is the one with the shorter exposure and the one underneath is the one with the long exposure. So what I want to do here is make sure that I get the correctly exposed shot of the stick onto the shot where I use the longer exposure, and the only way to really do this is to mask the stick out and adjust a few of the things on the image. So the first thing I'll do here is I'm going to select my quick selection tool and just select the areas of the stick that I want to get. One thing is I won't be using this little stick here at the bottom here. I'm actually going to be getting rid of that. So I'll just be getting the main parts that are sticking out of the water, nothing in the water, because whatever was in the water was blurred because of the movement of the water. I'll quickly do this mask here and we can get to the next step. Okay, so now that I got all the parts that I want selected, I'm going to press select and mask. And this way you'll see the parts that I actually have masked out. There's a few things here that can be fixed a little bit, so just take away these little parts that have appeared here. One thing I like to do before I make this mask usable, I add a little bit of smoothness to it and then add a little bit of a feather just so that the edges and stuff are not too harsh. And then I put my output to layer mask so I still have the original image and just the stick basically on top. So now you can see the stick part on top here. What I have to do now is basically move the image so that it matches up with the stick below. First I'll just move this normally by moving it around. The only way for me to get it to fit correctly here is to use warp. So I'm gonna have to go to edit, transform and warp, and then basically just drag around the image until it fits exactly with the image underneath. Pretty simple technique. It just takes a little time putting each part in its correct area. Okay, so now that I've got it where I want it, I'll just press enter so that it applies the effect. And then basically what I want to do is get rid of the stick in the background in the blurred part of the image here. So I'm just going to select my spot healing tool here just to take away some of those areas that I don't really want in the image. What that will do is basically get rid of the main stick here, and what I'll have left is the stick that is pretty much the correct exposure. Okay, so that did a pretty good job fixing it. So already looking much better. The only problem I have now is this part is still a little bit visible. So the only way for me to correct that is to use the healing brush tool and make a selection of the image that's already there. Put back basically a copy of the image, and this will just help it to get rid of those parts that are a little bit too close to everything else. So there we go. Now that I have pretty much all of the stick underneath gone, I can place that back on top and it's already looking really good. It looks like it should be there, and it doesn't even look like there's two exposures set on this. The only thing I have a little bit of a problem with is that the stick here is going up into that area. So what I want to do now is basically move this part down lower down here, and pretty much the only way I can do this is by cloning that area and dropping it down. But the only way for me to do this is to make a whole new layer where all of them are selected as one file. So now I've basically duplicated everything as one image. So now whatever's below is just, this is the final image now. So I'll be editing this part, and then if need be I will use the parts below to fix things again. But what I want to do now is actually duplicate this layer again, and basically what I do is heal out the stick completely. So I'll select the area that I want to copy from and just get rid of the stick and stop kind of where I want the stick to really stop, and I think around there should be good enough. So now I have that cut down. So what I'll do with this part is I'll take my clone stamp tool and copy the end of the stick there and paste it onto the one that I had edited. So basically now I can just stick that end of the stick on there. The only problem I have is that the background is starting to appear where the trees are and stuff, so I have to edit around that area using the clone stamp tool again and copy the parts of the water just to go around it, and this should work pretty much perfectly fine. The stick is a lot shorter now, it looks better, it doesn't go into the landscape in the background there, which just makes it a lot nicer. Compared to that, it looks a lot better. And there you go, that's the final image done. I did this a little bit quicker than I originally did, just to kind of get the point across to show you how to do it. And the original image I was a little bit more picky of what I fixed and changed. Alright, so that's this edit done. Hopefully I got across how I put the image together and it was easy enough to understand. If there's any of you other guys that were watching this without seeing the last video, go check that out. And also let me know if this did help you and if you would like some more videos like this. Otherwise, please subscribe to the channel, leave a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next one.